and welcome to this webinar, Unlocking Insights, Inspiring Reforms, Data and Prisons. My name is Madhurima, and I have been associated with the India Justice Report from its very inception. Today, we gathered to discuss the complex issues associated with prisons from the lens of data. Now, some instructions before we begin. So do keep yourself on mute to avoid any sound issues. We also encourage all of our participants to introduce themselves in the chat box and which city they are joining in from. Now, let me quickly introduce the panel and our moderator today. Maya Daruwala, who you all know, will be moderating this event. And she is the chief editor of the India Justice Report. She is a stellar reformist in the area of prisons and police reforms, and has been working in the sector for decades and has been an inspiration for many, including myself. We are then also joined by Honorable Justice Muralidhar. Justice Muralidhar, as all of you may know, his journey is marked by an unwavering dedication to justice. Following a distinguished career as a lawyer in Chennai and Delhi, he was appointed as a judge of the Delhi High Court in 2006, and he became the Chief Justice of the High Court of Odisha in 2021. He has spearheaded transformative reforms in both administrative and judicial realm. I'm sure all of us here today are aware of his numerous accomplishments in this sector. We are then also joined by Dr. M.C. Borwankar. Dr. Borwankar's career spans her service as the officer of the Indian Police Service within the Maharashtra cadre from 1981 to 2017. Despite her demanding role in police, she has also made significant contributions in academia, holding a doctorate and earning recognition as a fellow at the University of Minnesota, USA, as well as completing an executive development program at the University of New England, Australia. She has a lot of publications and has been spearheading law enforcement strategies, e-governance initiatives, human rights advocacy, and community engagements. Along with that, we are joined by Mr. N.S. Megarik. He is a seasoned police officer of the IPS and held various significant roles within Karnataka and the Government of India, including being the Superintendent of the Police, CBI, SP, just the city, being an SP, the ADG, and has also served as the DG of Correctional Services in Karnataka. We are also joined by Professor Vijay Raghavan, who is currently serving as a professor at the Center of Criminology and Justice at KISS, has previously led the Prayas project, focusing on legal rights and social re-entry for criminal justice clients. He has trained police, prison, and judicial officers on issues like gender and human rights. Professor Vijay Raghavan is also very well known among the student and academia in the country for being a stellar reformist in the area of prisons and legal aid. So with that short introduction, I'm going to quickly hand it over to Maya to moderate and initiate the discussion. Over to you, Maya.
Thank you. Thank you. And welcome to everybody, and especially my very experienced and expert panelists. I am Maya Daruwala, and I'm the convener and chief editor of the India Justice Report. I'd like to, first of all, before I go further, introduce also our collaborators in this event today, which is IndiaSpend. And Nilina is the representative here today. IndiaSpend is a non-profit project of the Spending and Policy Research Foundation based in Bombay. It is a charitable trust, and it began with the objective of addressing the shortage of data and evidence-led journalism in India. Over a decade, the IndiaSpend has shone a light on the essentials that affect our lives: public health, education, gender justice, social justice. They have an accent on climate change, environment, livelihoods. And the idea of their work is that there should be more informed journalism, informed by data. Now, a little bit about the India Justice Report, as well as how we came about. You know, we always complain about the justice system. We complain about the police, the prisons, legal aid, judiciary. But we often don't, even though we know, even though we complain how much they don't perform or they don't perform unsatisfactorily, we barely ever look at whether they have the means to perform as they should. Do they have the resources? Do they have the budgets, the human resources, the infrastructure? What are their workloads like? What is their composition? Do they reflect and represent the people of the country in all its diversity? Do we, as a public, as a civil society, as policy makers, as media, have enough information about these things? And we find that there are these siloed pieces of information, lots of information, all across, published by the government from time to time, published in reports, etc., but they are not coming together. And very few people know about it. And even if they know about it, how do they interpret it? How is it simplified? So, to fill this gap came the India Justice Report. It brought together all the information that is publicly available and usually siloed in different departments, all to one place, and developed a methodology by which to assess each state's structural capacity to deliver justice. Kind of looking at the anatomy and the bones and the makeup of the justice system, the subsystems, and to ask the question, do they have enough resources to perform in the way and to respond to public need and to their mandates? Now, because justice delivery is essentially a state subject, and because it impacts on people living in the states, we started to look at the data that was relevant to states. And uniquely, we started to compare and measure whether how the states were in relation to each other on the one hand, and on the other hand, look at trends to see whether they, the justice delivery system improved or didn't improve, and what the trends were that we would see. For instance, does vacancies improve? Does diversity improve? And in which areas does it improve? Now, why do we do this? We do it because we intended to put out data in a simplified form which would be relatable and which could be seen in one report across 4 pillars of justice: police, prisons, legal aid, and judiciary, by the policymakers, by implementers, by the media, by active citizens, by advocates who want better and holistic justice delivery. So today's endeavor is accented on 2 things. One is it is accented on prisons as a singular pillar. And the second accent that I would like to press upon with our panelists and with our audience is how can we use data not to look at the past only and to understand the present, but to look at solutions for the future. That should be the accent for today's discussion. So, what can be immediately repaired? What needs long-term policy interventions? And how can data help to do this? I hope that I have explained the objective of today's meeting. And with this, I hand it over to my colleagues Nayanika and Helena from IndiaSpend to take you through some of the key data that should inform today's discussion and will set the context, and I hope will be valuable to spreading the message of using data as a foundation for factual discussions rather than merely ideological discussions that come from one viewpoint or the other, but to be able to engage in dialogue with ourselves, with policymakers, and to inform debates through the facts of data. Now, that data may sometimes be unreliable, sometimes may be incomplete, but those are also things to be repaired for the future. Nilina, and Nayanika, it's over to you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Hi, good evening, everyone. I am Nayanika. I am a researcher with the India Justice Report. Thank you again. I hope I am audible. Thank you for joining in today. In the next few minutes, my colleague Nilina and I will take you through the major findings to give you a brief picture of the conditions in the prisons and to take you through how improved data can help us advocate for prison reform and to make systems more accessible. We are all aware that our prisons are overpopulated, but how many of us actually know how many prisons there are in the country? How many of us know how many prisons there are actually in the states that we live in? There are about 1,300 odd prisons in the country. As of today, they house 5 lakh prisoners. And as we all know, the conditions in the prisons are not great. They are overcrowded. There are hardly any doctors available, hardly any medicines. Along with that, the hygiene and the sanitation conditions are quite poor. And data corroborates exactly this. Yeah, I hope my screen is visible. What we know anecdotally, data tells us exactly, which it is evidenced clearly through data. And data tells us exactly how bad the conditions are. IJR's analysis in the last 10 years shows that prison populations, the number of prisoners inside prisons is rapidly growing, but the space available for them is not growing at the same pace. Occupancy as of 2022 stands at 131%. That means that it is 31% above capacity. Now on your screens, on the first graph, on the left-hand side of your screen, the graph in green shows exactly how, if you see the darker shade of green, it shows us, the darker shade of green shows us what the space available is for prisoners. And the lighter shade of green shows us how inmate populations have jumped by leaps and bounds over the years. As in 2012, the prison capacity was around 3 lakhs for 3 lakh prisoners. And in 2022, this has increased by 27% to around 2. So it basically means that the prisons, the 1,300 odd prisons in the country can house around 4 lakh prisoners. However, inmate populations have jumped by nearly 50%, which means that in spaces for 4 lakh people, there are about 1 lakh more people staying and living inside them. We, at the end of 2022, and there were about 5 lakh prisoners, as I said. But as I said, that the national the capacity, we are 31% over capacity, but this is just the national average. States like Uttarakhand, UP, and Delhi are 85% over capacity. But if we delve a little deeper and we go down to individual jails, we see that jails record occupancy rates at around 300 to 400%. Now, the next logical question obviously would be, who makes up the inmate populations? As I keep saying, that inmate population is at 5 lakhs. Who makes up these inmate populations? Now, inmates are of 2 kinds. Just to give you a brief introduction to who they are. The first kind are the convicts, that is people who have been held guilty by courts. And the other are the undertrials, or people who are waiting for their investigation or their trials to complete. It's important to know that they've not been held guilty by any court. Now, on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll be able to see the graph in purple. The lighter shade of purple shows you the share of convicts over the last 10 years. And the darker shade shows you the share of under trials over the last 10 years. Now, as you can see, the share of convicts has always been around 20 to 25% of the prison populations, but the share of under trials has remained more, around 70 to 75% of the prison populations. In 2022, share of under trials was 75%, which is the highest in the last 10 years. Just to give you an example, about all states record under trial populations of above 60%. Bihar, for example, has 89% under trials in its prisons, and Delhi has the highest, which is around 91%. I will now hand it over to Nilina to take you over who these under trial populations are.
Yeah, thanks, Nainika. So, like she pointed out, 76% of the inmates in India's prisons are awaiting trials or they're under trials. So, what this means is that 3 out of 4 people behind bars have not actually been convicted of a crime. In fact, India has the second highest share of under trial prisoners among the Commonwealth nations. But this is not just a statistic. It represents a troubling trend that has been on the rise. So over the last years, the share of under trial prisoners who are behind bars has been steadily increasing. In 2012, this was 66%, and it slowly increased to 69% in 2019. But after this, it shot up drastically to 76% in 2020, which was the pandemic year. Even though there have been efforts to address this issue, like in the year 2022, about 25,000 under trial prisoners were released as a part of a NALSA campaign. Despite that, in that same year, the overall number of under trials was still higher than the previous year. Now the question arises, who are these under trial prisoners? To understand this better, what we did at IndiaSpend is we collected data from NCRB's Prison Statistics of India report for the last 25 years. This database is available publicly on a portal called PrisonWatch portal. So here you can look at different aspects of the under trial prisoners across states over these last 25 years. You can understand the demography, the period of incarceration for the under trials, and the crimes that they have been charged with. So what does this data tell us? Nainika, could you? Yeah, so this is a look at what information this data is telling us. What it shows is that 2 out of 3 under trial prisoners belong to marginalized caste groups. They belong to either SC, ST, or OBC castes. This reflects the deep-seated biases and the over-policing of these communities within our society. A significant portion of them are also illiterate. 65% of them have not completed class 10th education. What is also alarming is that around half of the under trial population belongs to the younger age group, which is 18 to 30. While among convicts, this is much less. Less than a third of convicts belong in this age group. So it's a younger population of belonging to communities who are economically backward and marginalized. And what is also concerning is the amount of time that these individuals spend in prison. So so we also collected the detention duration for under trial prisoners in India's prisons. And what this tells us is that this percent of under trial prisoners who have spent more than a year in prison without being charged with a crime has been increasing over these last 25 years. As you can see the graph below, this has been steadily rising, and in 2002, this was at its highest at 31%. About 9% of under trial prisoners spend over 3 years waiting for a verdict. While certain states show better figures, like Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, a few of the states have better figures for the prisoners who are released within 3 months or within a year of incarceration. There are several states which have very concerning figures, where, for example, in Jammu and Kashmir, about 46% or nearly half of under trial prisoners spend over a year in prison without being charged. So now I'll hand it over to Nainika, and she'll delve into the implications of these trends.
Thank you, Nilina. Right. As Nilina put it very succinctly, that our prison administrations are dealing with a very large population to begin with. Obviously, this has implications when it comes, very serious implications to people staying inside behind bars, also to the people who are working within prisons. Large populations put an immense amount of strain on the prison administration. Now, the prison administration are of a few kinds. I'll just give you a briefer into that. There are obviously the superintendents who are in charge of the jails. We have the guarding staff, the jailers and the assistant jailers, etc. Then we have the essential staff, which includes the doctors, the welfare officers, social workers, and the psychologists who take care of the physical and the mental well-being of inmates. Now, as we've been saying, that Indian prisons in India deal with rising prison populations, increasing prison populations. Now, as I was saying, that this puts an immense amount of pressure on the staff of the prison. But it's not now when I say that there are 5 lakh prisoners inside prisons, this is on a particular date. In a particular year, there are about 18 to 20 lakh people who move in and out of prisons. This adds on to the pressures on the staff. Now, for this actually means that the prison administrations need adequate staff, adequate manpower to deal with such large populations. Now, however, data shows that jails across the country do not have adequate staff at all. The guard staff or the guarding staff have consistently recorded which means that 1 in 3 of staff is missing. I'm sorry, I think I can hear.
Somebody needs to mute
themselves.
Someone has to mute. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. As I was saying, that the guarding staff is recording consistently 30% vacancies. More concerningly are the vacancies or the low number of essential staff. For example, medical staff over the years, if you can see on your screen, the purple bars show you the number of vacancies over the years of doctors. In 2022, it records somewhere over 45%. But if you go a little deeper into states, you'll find that states record about 70 to 90% vacancies among doctors. All across the country, there are just 700 doctors for the 5 lakh prisoners inside prisons. This makes up a huge workload over one doctor. To give you an example, Uttarakhand has about 7,000 prisons across its 11 jails, but there is only one doctor on record for serving these 7,000 prisoners. Similar is the case for correctional officers or psychologists. Most states do not record any psychologists among their staff. In fact, the number of psychologists in the country, there are only 25. So this puts an alarming it rings alarm bells for the people inside, for the conditions that prisoners live in. Now, data tells us this is exactly the kind of picture that data helps us paint. It tells us how to further our advocacy for prison reform. It helps us implement more informed policy decisions and to allocate better resources and in a better way for different prison administrations. Now, however, the problem here lies that the data, there are several pieces of the data that are missing. There are several gaps in the data, which I will let Nilina take over.
Right. Exactly. So like Danika said, the data is clearly very important. It helps us understand the gravity of the situation and it helps us identify the areas which need urgent attention. But as she rightly pointed out, there are also gaps in this data. So while we were putting this data together in the PrisonWatch portal, what we realized is that there are certain limitations with this data that we are working with. For instance, there are certain nuances that it fails to capture. Like we said previously, there are a number of huge share of prisoners who spend under trials who spend over a year in prison, but we do not have information of what are the kind of charges that what is the kind of crimes that they have been charged with. Similarly, there is the breakdown of the demography at the granular level is missing. One example of why this data is important is, again, looking at the state of Bihar. Previously, Nanika shared that example of how it is one of the states which has the highest share of under trial population. What we've observed is that this under trial population has surged.
Yeah, sorry to come in between, but could you try, just in the interest of time, could you try to wrap it up in the next minute, please?
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. So I'll quickly go over the data gaps. So what I wanted to make sure that we understand is that there are certain nuances within the data which we're not able to capture based on the data that we currently have based on the data that's available with NCRB. Why this is important is that this granular information helps us understand the effectiveness of prison reforms, because they are often conducted at a local level, and with the state level data, we don't have the chance to understand which are the kind of reforms which are working and which are not. Also, another point is that Maharashtra is one of the bigger states, and granular data of caste and religion is missing from this state. So I'll quickly wrap up. In essence, the data gives us a glimpse into the issues, but at present, it's not sufficient. And that is the idea behind why we wanted to make the data publicly available, so that we can ask the right questions of this data and investigate further to understand what is going on at a local level. I'll give it back to Nan.
Thank you, Nilina. I would now request I'm sorry, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Thank you so much, Nilina. I would now like to request Justice Muridhar to please come in with his remarks. Please, sir, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me for this event. And it's good to see all my old friends here. I wanted to begin by saying that some things that have been spoken about, namely overcrowding of prisons and the unreliability of data, the gaps in the data, are things that have plagued us for a very long time. And IJR reports itself have been coming out over the years, as have the NCRB and Prison Statistics India. One reason for this is the ineffectiveness, I think, of the RTI system itself. If you look at the Right to Information Act under Section 4, every public institution has to be compelled to put certain data on a website. Now, I don't know whether this has been effectively implemented vis-a-vis the prison systems in India, and I think this is something that we needed to look into. I don't know whether we tried the RTI route and compelling the departments to put accurate data within a good time. Most of the reports you will find will relate back to at least a year or two behind. For instance, the 2012 statistics will be made available only in 2014, and so on and so forth. I don't know whether this is a healthy pattern at all, while on the one hand, we must be careful that data is accurate, that should not be an excuse for delaying the data to a point where it becomes meaningless to get that kind of a data so late. Having been in Orissa for over 2.5 years as Chief Justice, I must share with all of you that the annual reports of the Orissa High Court were invariably released in the months of February of the following year, which meant that January to December statistics could actually be compiled, analyzed, and put out within a month. This is possible because you start doing this exercise through the year. You don't start working on this only in the last few months. And very often the working on those statistics happens around June or July of the following year. So you can imagine the time lag that takes place, and this is not a healthy practice at all. So even in the question in the context of preparing data, putting out data, how soon it should be put out. Like for instance, the US Supreme Court, the Chief Justice of the US Supreme Court brings out a status of the judicial report on the 1st of January of a year, which means they're up to date on their statistics through the year. So this gathering of statistics and putting out statistics has to be an exercise that is continuous, and for it to be meaningful has to be out at the earliest point in time. Second is the kind of statistics that need to be put out. I completely see the point that was being made that when we look at the undertrial population in a jail, it's very hard to find out what are the types of crimes they've been accused of and why they are in prisons. And I must say that even as part of the India Justice Report, we must not focus our attention. Of course, prisons are a main focus of attention, but we must also look at the broader picture of detention in the country. Today, you have detention centers. I'm talking of the NRC exercise that has happened. There are, in fact, detention centers in Assam, in other states as well. And this we should acknowledge. And when we put out India Justice Report, Vijay Raghavan is here, and I'm sure he'll agree with me that we have very many more detention, places of detention of people, including the foreigners being detained. So when we look at all of this, we should not focus, we should not confine our focus, if I may say, use the right expression. We should not confine our focus only to prisons, that is the central jail, the divisional jail, sub-jail, and that, so on and so forth. But detention centers, and I would add to this, all your quasi-penitentiary institutions, penal custodial institutions, like for instance, Nari Niketans, observation homes for boys. In some states, we still have the beggary laws. Some states have abolished, but many states, the beggary laws continue. So you have detention centers where you're keeping people brought under those laws. So you have very many more. And if I can go further, there are police lockups. And so I think the range of detention centers has increased. And that we should acknowledge. While we say we don't have data, we must say that we don't have data on all these things as well. Like, do we know now in the detention centers in Assam, where the so-called non-citizens have been held, what is the accurate population of those non-citizens? We don't know. And these are not detention centers just in Assam. Like I said earlier, it is in other states as well. So this is something that we need to acknowledge in a report like this. Third, we've talked of judicial impact assessment. We must talk of prison impact assessment. And I would, instead of using the word prison, I would say detention center impact assessment. We make a new law by which we disenfranchise people, for instance, right? That impact of the law is then you're pushing people into detention centers. You make a very harsh law. I'm talking of not just UAPA, let's say PMLA or even your economic offense laws, where bail is routinely denied, right? As a result of denial of bail, the undertrial population increases. And courts are deprived of the powers to grant bail because the threshold for grant of bail is made so high that prison populations immediately, there's an immediate impact on prison populations. Prisoners can't be released. So this is something that we need to acknowledge in a study like this. The impact that severe criminal laws or newer laws have on the prison population. Like we cut down on permissions for rallies, right, of processions. And there will be people like farmers' protests, for instance. One event like a farmers' protest can overnight increase the under-trial population in some of these states where the protests are going on, right? Then you have these detentions under sections 107, 151 CRPC, preventive arrests under CRPC. They also land up in prisons. You have in many states the preventive detention statutes, like the Gundas Act in the South, the Public Safety Act, the COFEPOSA. I'm just saying there is a range of preventive detention statutes. Those people also land up in prisons. So if you drew a chart, this is my suggestion to Dilima and Nayanika, that you draw a graphic chart where the flow from various statutes that criminalize activities that push people into prisons. Let's take the Immoral Traffic Prevention Act, right? Children in conflict with the law. I'm just saying the prison system, the criminal justice system, particularly the prison system, you have people coming in because of various oppressive laws, failure to grant bail, failure to post bonds, right? Despite being granted bail, all of that. So once you show it graphically, then we'll know this impact on the prison system. And it's therefore a serious, far more serious problem than simply saying we don't have enough prisons. Fourth, I wanted to just share with all of you the experience of Orissa. If you go onto the Orissa High Court website, you will find a PIL portal. I don't know if Nayanika and Nilima have had any occasion to see that PIL portal. In that PIL portal, you will find a particular PIL concerning prisons. And in that portal, in fact, I've had my own young researchers here look at it. You have all the orders concerning the reform of prisons in Orissa. You have the various affidavits filed by the state government giving out statistics. Then you have reports of the amicus curiae appointed by the High Court analyzing those statistics. And for instance, you mentioned the lack of mental health professionals in jails. Actually, there's a lack of mental health professionals throughout the country itself. That's a larger problem. In fact, this prison problem is a smaller, a capsule of that larger problem as far as absence of psychologists is concerned. But how we identified that problem in Orissa, how we tackled that problem in Orissa is very instructive. So while you talk of what states have not done, it's important to say which states have done, how they have done it, and how it has been possible to do it there. Whether it was collaboration, with civil society groups, or with a more, committed kind of set of bureaucrats in those states who felt this to be important enough to pay attention to allocate resources to, or even the prison administration. You've had some very, dedicated IG of prisons in some of these states. So while we talk of the failures of the prison system, there are small pockets. I'm deliberately using the word small pockets where reforms have been attempted, including open prisons, and with some degree of success. Now, for an audience like this, it's important to know that there are some places where things have worked, many places probably where things haven't worked. Maybe one should learn from the other. Like when we had this PIL hearings, and Vijayaraghavan is here, Maya is here, they all participated in those hearings. We had those hybrid hearings. We had experts come in, and we have links for those hearings on that PIL portal. So each of those hearings took place perhaps on a Saturday. It went on for 2.5 hours, where there was an active discussion in a non-adversarial atmosphere between the prison administration, the court, and the civil society groups, where you could voice your concern, you could put out what you've gathered as information for them to respond to, and for them to then give you information which you could then respond to. So this interchange, this dialogue was facilitated by the PIL being conducted in that kind of an open atmosphere. And if that could also be, looked at as a possibility in different states, in many high courts, the high courts in the PIL jurisdiction are dealing with issues concerning prisons. It's just we need to know what are the better ways of doing that and keeping that as a continuing exercise. You've heard of the expression continuing mandamus. It's important to keep the court in the loop to tell it that what is possible to be done when there's some degree of pressure from the court with deadlines being fixed and court asking for compliance reports on various dates about steps taken to improve the conditions of prison. So in Orissa, for instance, we could deal with the issue of overcrowding. I'm not saying that we found a complete solution, but we definitely were able to mitigate and find a solution where we could redistribute the prison population without again affecting their capacity to or their need to come to the courts in different hearings. The issue of quality of food in the prisons, the amenities in the prisons, including medical facilities, and so on and so forth. Another dimension of this whole way of looking at prison populations, which is very peculiar to this country, I'm sure, is there are prisoners from different states. Like you'll find a prisoner from Jammu and Kashmir, either in Uttarakhand or in Rajasthan or sometimes in Karnataka, right? And likewise, you have a prisoner from one state found in another state. You will have a prisoner who's required to be produced in cases in different states and who's unable to be produced. So there are this category of prisoners as well who actually come in from other states but land up in prisons of a particular state. Like I think there are prisoners from Punjab now in the prisons in Assam. And this also needs to be highlighted because every time there is a delay in production of a prisoner from one prison to the court of another state, the trial in that state gets delayed of that case. And that has an immediate impact on how long the person continues to remain within the prison system. Then this issue of denial of bail and failure to produce sureties because the surety amount is fixed so high that you cannot comply with those conditions. So this is one reason why the prison population has kept increasing in our country. Having said all of this, I must flag 2 or 3 concerns about data itself. While you are absolutely right on unreliability of data, reliable data should be shared, but within the system. Both in Haryana, and this was replicated in Orissa, we have the system of generating what are called custody certificates, right? That custody certificate or the custody report, which is presented before the court, will tell you why the prisoner is in this prison, what has been the track record. That is, how often has the prisoner been released on parole or furlough or granted bail or interim bail, how often he's complied with those conditions, he or she, and how they come back in good time. What are the offenses with which they've been charged? If there is more than one case, what is the status in each case? This entire thing can be generated and presented before the court without too much waste of time. Because when a bail application is filed in a court, the court asks for this information. And if it is available firsthand on the first date itself, it saves a lot of time for the court. And Haryana has got an excellent model for this, and Orissa has replicated it in a limited extent. This is possible only if the data is accurate and the data preserved by the prisons is not different from the data preserved by the police. They should tally, they should match. Usually there will be mistakes, for instance, in spellings. Ajay Kumar could be AJAY, or somebody could key in as AJEY, right? So you could end up picking up the wrong person for this kind of a custody certificate. So cleaning up the data, ensuring accurate data is very important. So in Indian system, you always have son of, daughter of, wife of, and all of that. We'll say Ramesh Kumar, son of so-and-so is different from Ramesh Kumar, son of somebody else. So otherwise, Ramesh Kumar is such a common name in our Indian prisons. So the custody certificate is something that you need to understand because that tells you how it materially affects the possibility of the prisoner continuing to remain in prison or being released from prison. And the last, because these are dimensions for future reports of yours, there are many prisoners in our system who've completed more than half the sentence which they have been punished. There's a separate provision in the CRPC facilitating their coming out on bail if they've completed more than half the sentence. That's now built into it. It came through judgments. It's now built into the statute. If a report like yours can tell accurately, to a certain degree of accuracy, how much of this under trial population is already qualified in that score, that they've completed more than half the period, it will be tremendous help for courts to then target those prisoners for release. There are prisoners who've completed their entire term and their appeals are still pending in the High Court. And if we can get accurate statistics, what we did in Orissa was to get the DG prisons to periodically give us statistics of people who've been granted, who completely served their sentence and left the prison system, or prisoners who've been granted remission and left the system, and their appeals are still pending. So this way, if there is an active collaboration between the police, the courts, and the prisons, it can help prisoners in a very direct kind of a way. This kind of an exercise should be made mandatory by drawing up checklists for visitors to prisons. That visitor system that we have in prisons is, by and large, I would think, a very ineffective system as it is now. In some states, it is good, but in many states, it's not working. So if we can have an audit, how often do the visitors actually visit the prisons? The district judge is supposed to visit. What is the kind of checklist they have when they enter the prisons? What should they be looking for? What should their reports contain? When CHRI intervened, I think the prison matter, Maya will recall, I think you suggested a certain format for submitting report on visits to the prisons. If that can be systematized and then made compulsory for all visitors for all the prisons, that will again help very much. My concern, and this is the point I'm trying to make, that all this data gathering, data analysis must ultimately help people in prisons. It must help actually improve the system of prisons. It must help prisoners. And there are others, non-criminal residents of prisons, like children of convicts, children of under trials, right? So we shouldn't forget those larger categories. And like I said, the women who are seemingly, purportedly being protected by being kept in Nari Niketans, invariably against their choices. So there is this larger population that we need to address ourselves to. And all our reports, all our gathering of data and analysis of data must actually help improve the system in prisons. And I'm still flagging that, the good practices should be highlighted along with the failures so that we know how to go forward in this way. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Justice Muralidhar. Thank you so much. You echo some of the concerns that follow me all through the working of developing each new IJR. How much can you put in? How much? How do you winnow out stuff? We are always looking for good practice. And the fact that you mentioned the Orissa good practice, you will see me chasing you to find it and to document.
Exactly, the PN portal. That's what I'm saying. I'll put it out there.
Absolutely, and I will pick it up. Don't you
Yeah.
worry. I will.
Yeah.
Pick it up. You're right. The India Justice Report is recently embarked on prisons and all that is intended to make eventually either systems reform or even help one person get out of prison. But the frustration lies with, as I say, the unreliability of data, the gaps in the data, and what we are able to get of a year or a year and a half. That is not to be defensive at all, but to be extremely open to having your advice on a running basis for the report and making it better each time. There's no two ways about that. Would you be in a position to take questions, or would you have you?
Maybe just for 5 or 10 minutes. 6:10. Yeah. I need to leave at 6:10. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Madhurima, do you have questions, or Sugandha was there? I believe they were waiting to ask you questions.
Hi, good evening, Justice Muralidhar. This is Sugandha from CHRI. I've had the privilege and honor of being part of that Odisha PIL where you were presiding. And I mean, it was really a very, very different experience for all of us where, we could see the civil society participation and, how, the various departments of the state came in together and, tried to work out solutions at that time. So one question is that, I feel is that why is there lack of coordination among stakeholders? Like, the High Court had to actually come in and bring everyone together to say, and, you were talking about checks and balances and, so how do you ensure that this actually gets done in a sort of a routine way, and it's not that once in a while the High Court has to come in and then everyone sort of gets into and then the accountability is sought and people respond, or the state responds. So and this example, this is something that we've seen during COVID. I particularly remember Odisha, Punjab, Delhi, when everyone actually came together through those, high-powered committees, and they actually made that effort to reduce prison population. So, what would be your advice? How do you, how does this actually happen in a routine way and not, because a pandemic has struck, or because the High Court seeks answer? And the second question, sir, I have is, with the new laws coming in, and there's been a more impetus on technology, right? So where should reformers like us concentrate our research and interventions on? So if you could guide us with your maybe top 5 or top 3 focus points.
Actually, on the later part, it's having a nose. I'm sure Maya is one person who's got a nose like this. Having a nose for bureaucrats, and Vijay Rakhan will agree with me, having a nose for bureaucrats, prison officials who are more sensitive than the others. You can easily find them out everywhere, all right? In every state, in every region, there will be some who are more sensitive to these issues, who want to make that change.
Right.
It's us trying to find them and give them that push. So in Orissa, the DG of prisons, when he realized that the High Court is serious about this,
Right.
he got enthused, because the transformations became visible. We would ask them in real time to show us whether the wards have been properly cleaned up, strengthened, the walls, the cracks in the walls have been repaired, painted. So they had to show us real-time photographs, right? Which means you have to get your act together, you have to go. And he could then tell his staff, listen, there's this High Court watching us, we better get this done. So we need to first identify, because if you start for the entire country, you can't do it. You'll have to narrow down your focus on some states where you might find them more responsive than the other states. At various points in time, Andhra has had some bureaucrats like that, prisons officials like that. Maharashtra has had them. Punjab and Haryana have had them. Orissa has had them. So, and one learns from the other. Then you tell the, let's say Rajasthan person, sir, Haryana has done it. So Telangana has done it. That kind of a thing. And I'm sure Vijay Raghavan is in a better position to answer this kind of a question than even I am. Because the work this has done is quite remarkable, just in Maharashtra. So they've set examples. So the next IG who comes in Maharashtra, he'll have before him all the earlier examples where things have worked. And then your reforms, focus on reforms, because your work is very important. IJR's work is very, very, very crucial and important for us, for present and for the future, because the number of detentions in this country is going up and up. Your statistics show that. And we are concerned not just about people who are our people, but people who suddenly, whom you've declared not our people, right? Through laws. So this has become a matter of great concern that in various states, look at the refugee camps that we have, the Sri Lankan, so-called Sri Lankan refugees in Tamil Nadu, right? Held in various camps in Tamil Nadu. What is their condition? Recently, you had one of them die, right? Who supposed awaiting deportation. We have a large number of Africans. We have a large number of Africans in this country who are held in detention. So I'm just saying that our focus should be on this, what is happening to the aspect of, detention itself, not limited to actual what's happening in the courts and coming into prisons, but through these various other means where we're holding people. So I would still think that the conditions of these detention centers, basic rights, the observation of basic protocols, international protocols on conditions of prisons, rights of prisoners, and their access to basic amenities, access to the outside world, like access to a telephone call, right? All of this, I think, is very, very important, I think, for immediate focus and attention.
You have a question, Vale?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
No, so I just want to ask Justice Muralidhar, so you've seen both the pre-COVID, COVID, and now you're seeing post-COVID from the outside, as it were. There was a certain momentum towards decongestion efforts among prisons, as was also highlighted in our presentation. Why or what has led to this sort of, dissipation of those efforts about decongestion of prisons? What is the institutional sort of lack of motivation? Any insight from you would be very valuable.
No, the certain behavior is incentivized in a different kind of way, right? There's a general perception that if there's a problem, we should have a harsh law. Like, and if you have a harsh law, the law should be shown to work. So we are looking at what is called a muscular state and not a soft state. The minute we have a perception that if you let people out of prisons, our systems are too weak, it is not working. Even if somebody is granted bail after remaining in jail for 3 years or 5 years without trial, the media carries a headline saying so-and-so walks free. So this general perception that we have that for laws to work, we must have detention. Right? You will have a constant line by the police in many courts when they're opposing the grant of bail or even anticipatory bail. They'll say that the person is not cooperative. And custodial interrogation is therefore necessary. So you have to read between the lines. So this is something that has to do with our general approach by the police and the criminal justice system to what we perceive as people having it too easy. I still have people saying, oh, he's having a wonderful time in prison. And these are by people who've not lost one day's liberty. So this general perception we have to work at changing. Not changing just among the general public, but even among the police, even among the administration, even among the judges. We have to work at several fronts on how we view this whole system. And only then I think this will ease up. One more question and then I'm off.
Yes, I was going to ask my panelists whether they had a question for you, but there is someone waiting in the wings. Mr. Chanda, would you like to ask a question?
Good evening, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Thank you for giving this. Yes, ma'am. I would want to ask our chief guest for this conference that I am currently researching upon that, the one aspect of this prison administration system, that is the children of prisoners, who are usually referred to as the hidden victims. And somewhere they are getting suffered for the incarcerated backgrounds of their parents. And simultaneously, there are a lot data that is gap in the so-called NCRB data, NFHS data, and so data are coming from the Prison Statistics India. So anything or everything, if we talk about the profiling of the prisoners that have been done while they are entered or they are making an entry within the prison administration system as a convict or as a under trial, those profiling are not been done based upon certain children or certain background, whether they are married, how many children they are having, whether those children are below 18, who are going to take custody, and how their rights can be protected. So on this particular review, means I have just went through our Vijay Raghavan sir's report in 2002, which have created a assistance in coming with the Honorable Supreme Court judgment in the R.D. Upadhyay case, where certain forms of guidelines
Just your
has been
question.
given.
Just your question, your pointed question.
Yeah, sir, my question is how this, sir, to reach to the children who are, there are two categories of children of prisoners. One who is staying with the incarcerated mothers, and other category of children who are living in the community whose mother or father are inside the jail. What could be the strategy, as I am pursuing PhD in this particular topic in the state of West Bengal, how to reach those children?
I think you
Because
need a good research assistant. Right now, since I can't spend for more than 2 minutes, I can't be that effective research assistant that you want. I would only tell you that Delhi High Court has actually dealt with this. There are judicial orders of the Delhi High Court dealing with this very issue that you highlighted. Maybe that could be one way forward. If you can write to me on my email, I'll give you more sources. All right, sir.
Thank you, Justice Muralidhar.
Thank you.
Very, very gracious of you to offer that.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry my panelists didn't get a chance to.
But we'll have our conversations. Vijay and all is an old friend.
Yes.
So there's no problem.
Yes.
And now that you have opened this door, you can be sure that I will be at your doorstep.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So, Madhurima, are you there? I think she gets cut off. So
yeah, I'm there, but you can go ahead into the panel now, Maya.
Yeah. So this is the moment where we introduce our panel once again. Dr. Vijay Raghavan, Madam Meera Burwankar, and Dr. Meghare. Two of them are in the police and have also been prison administrators. And of course, Vijay is the doyen of the academic world in terms of things to do with the prison. And he's also part of the India Justice Report. So you've been waiting very patiently, but may I start with Meera, if I may? And Meera, my question to you is that you have been a senior, one of the senior, in many of the senior most positions, both in the police and in the prison administration. You've seen all the problems, but you are also very solution focused. So my question really is, in your experience, what have been the pathways to the solutions? And has data helped you get there? Or is data one of the premier means of getting there? What are the tricks of the trade that actually take you from the status quo to making a valuable contribution and improving at least some part of the prison system? How do you get changes on the ground? How do you get changes at headquarters? How do you get changes in mindset from your experience?
Yeah, Maya, can you hear me?
Yes, I can indeed.
Okay, so I have understood whatever I have understood of your query. I would like to respond briefly. One, every prison leader, whether it is the superintendent or DIG or IG prison or ADG prison, we get monthly data. Maybe some states they have weekly data, but in Maharashtra I used to get monthly data in the same format which NCRB puts. So I would say that as far as leadership is concerned, each state leader of prison gets the data on time, but collation at the level of NCRB is late, which the justice has pointed out. I accept that. But I also feel that I would like to understand where we have identified gaps to be there in data, because when as a prison officer, I am accepting that I do get data and I do make changes, modifications as per the data available to me. I would like to identify the gaps, like the justice has identified the detention centers. That's a good gap which he has identified. And I also feel that the data which comes to us talks of existing gaps which are being traditionally identified and are based on lack of resources. Though I was surprised that in IJR report we have commented about inability to use the budget. That is mainly because the budget is sanctioned. It's my experience. We have an officer from Karnataka also who has headed Karnataka prison. The budget is sanctioned in, say, January or February, and we have to finish it by 31st March. And many a times we are not able to complete the process. But I would like to say that IJR, or all of us today who are present here as participants, 39 of us, we have also not only to talk of lack of resources, which we identify through our monthly or yearly statements or the annual statement of NCRB, but can we identify the gaps in use of the existing resources? One is government has a kitty, it has to distribute. Prison is not its priority. So we make noise, but we don't get resources. Whatever resources we have, are we making the good use? That's what I feel. Can we analyze that? And my third point is that, like we have identified, your team has identified that somewhere we have one doctor for 774 prisoners, and somewhere we have a doctor for a medical officer for 7,000 plus prisoners. Now, when we analyze the data, I would like to understand what is the ratio in open population, in general population. I don't think India would have one doctor for 774 citizens. My experience has been that the doctors' availability is very poor in Maharashtra. So I accept that. But when I'm accepting that, I would also like to identify the solution. So it is like, can we get medical help, medical assistance online now? And we had started doing that, video conferencing of prisoners with the ophthalmologist for eyes, like that. So when we are identifying a gap, can we also identify a solution? That would interest me. And also the data which NCRB is putting, the data which IJR is analysis, like Uttarakhand has one doctor for 7,000, and therefore deaths are more in the prison, while another state has 700 prisoners for one doctor, and therefore deaths within the prison are less. Expenditure on food is less, therefore more prisoners are being taken to the hospital or are suffering from ill health. This analysis, can we do that? That's my fourth question. And my last 2 points are that like in Maharashtra, we have talked of 84 NGOs working in Maharashtra prison. I used to find that they are interested in one function. You give Diwali gifts. These are the kinds of NGOs which are operating. Karnataka officer may have a different experience, or all of you may have. The sustained NGO working with the prison, I find very few. And the justice has identified a very good format, which seems to be for the visitors, official visitors visit to the prisons, which it seems CHRI has developed. I think that can be, with the help of maybe justice and the government MHA, can be circulated and requested to be followed. And this point about understanding the age of the children of a inmate is also a very important point made by one of the participants. Yes, I don't think we do that. We only keep a record of the children who are with the mother, but we don't keep the record of children who belong to the inmates. I don't think prison department even considers its responsibility. My last point is that justice said that data collection helps prisoners. I am requesting that data timely, yes, but equally important is its analysis. And it will not only help prisoners, it will help administration also. Like if we are able to identify some gaps and we are able to fill those gaps, it will help academicians, administrators, academicians also, as well as the prisoners. So these are the points which I would like to highlight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mirat. I'm going to, because we are a panel and there's a limited amount of time, I would love to take that discussion forward, but I'm going to go to Mr. Megarek. Mr. Megarek, you've been instrumental in initiating a number of reforms in prisons in Karnataka. What has been your experience? Has data played a role in it, or is it really not played much of a role, but something else has? I remember you talking to me in Bangalore and telling me that your direct advocacy within the system itself had helped make changes. But you must have decided on how these changes would come about, etc., on the basis of some factual information. And today, since we're discussing data, and the IJR really is restricted to its mandate by what is available in the data, please could you illustrate how you may have experienced this?
Sir, please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Hello.
sir.
Yeah. Good evening, Maya and all other panelists and the participants of this workshop. I'm very happy to be here. And you know that on many occasions we have interacted jointly as stakeholders in the area of prison reforms. And I remember in the IJR of, I think, 18, when it came out, we had discussion with the government of Karnataka and the chief secretary, and a lot of things we could expose how the government functions, where the gaps are there, how could we improve that and all that. Since you specifically asked me about the insider story of the activism, so I say that we have to be part and parcel of the whole system, and we have to involve ourselves wholeheartedly. You know that as Mrs. Borwankar had just mentioned, and she is one of our guiding force and is very senior police IPS officer, both in the policing, field policing, that is executive policing, and in the prison network. So, when I was Commissioner of Police Bangalore City, my approach to the prisoners or to the criminals was totally different. or as ADG Law and Order, or heading the district or the city units or the CID or whatever units we work in, our approach as police officer is totally different than the other people and all. After being police commissioner, immediately there was an occasion that I had to come to the prison posting. And the name, we all know that the name prison evokes, negativity. I was also taken little with a pinch of salt that, okay, how would I be able to do that? But then, yes, the roles reversed, and we all understand during the discussion and elsewhere also that there is a lot of distrust, whether it is distrust with the civil society, whether it is distrust with the media, whether it is distrust with the court, whether it is distrust with the public at large. No, it was just mentioned that if a prisoner is released after 3 years of completion of his prison tenure, then it is considered to be, oh, he is walking out free. I mean, that kind of approach is not there. And whatever news is published about the prison is always, I think, I can't quantify, but I can say that the majority of this is always negative. At times, I had faced a lot of news reports and media reports, which the headings are different. Though the correspondents or the news writers, they want to highlight the good things there, but the headlines will put it off. Headlines will always start with negativity and all that. So that distrust generates further distance from the prison administration. The people who are there manning the prisons, the prison officials and the staff. I have perhaps mentioned earlier also, I must say that they are all prisoners for their entire life. The prisoners go for few times or a number of months, days, or years. But the prison staff, they are confined to prisons for the entire life, and you know how difficult it is there to handle the hardcore criminals and what kind of mental agonies and psychological effects are there on their health and mental status and all that, and their families and all that. So that makes us to think that where are we? What should we do? So once I took over in a difficult circumstances, you know that there was a lot of the news, but the Karnataka prisons were in very adverse noticed. I can name that Shashikala episode, which the prison officials were involved, and then both of them had to the DG prisons, and the other DIG had to go out and all that, and I was sent to jail. No, so normally whenever the people used to ask me, where are you? When I'm in jail. That is the kind of response I used to say. So my focus was not on day-to-day administration of the prisons. My focus was to ensure that the prison administration runs, and whoever has its duty, they perform their duties positively. So that is what number one priority was. We must think that the prisoners are the mainstay or the focus of the entire working. Now, the prisoners, if we pay attention to them, then perhaps the things will be taken care of. That now, what I used to say that the prison administration, like food, shelter, and medical, these three, and of course legal aid and the other things come later on and all that. So if that is the thing taken care of, then perhaps we will be able to sort it out a lot of problems which are prevailing the prisons. Number two,
if I interrupt you, forgive me. If I may interrupt you, I'd like you to talk about, I wanted to go to Mr. Raghavan, but I wanted to ask you, how do you deal with making improvements with the prison's administrators, the staff? We've talked a lot about...
That's what the point number one, that's what I'm coming to, those 3 points, which perhaps we have discussed in the past also. Number one is the prison staff. Now, if we make sure that they are safe and secure, our problem is, we can give a lot of positivity in their minds. we have to ensure first and foremost that they are safe and secure. Number two, as I mentioned about the prison administration, and if you take care of number one and number two, then third thing which is very important is human rights. This automatically taken care of. Them. So if I tell you, if a prisoner is a sick, I mean is sick. I mean, he has to be, he's bleeding or he has fever or some other mental or health condition. And if the prison official goes to him and takes care of him, oh, what happened? Are you okay? If that kind of approach is there, I think, and the necessary action is taken, I think it makes a lot of difference in the mindset of the prisoners as well as the prison administration, and it makes them safe and secure. So these are the three basics which I would like to insist upon every time and all that. Now, we're talking about the prison administration. Again, there are a lot of things which we do. Now, my job is not to confine myself in taking action against the prison staff who default on their duties or some other things, doing here and there, or a day-to-day basis, looking after what is happening in the prison administration and all that, or watching the the CCTVs of entire state prisons and all that. My purpose and my aim, prime aim and objective was to interact with the government and bring it to their notice that these are the things which we require. These are the things which we require for the prison and all that. And I, having advantage of being like a crisis manager, I was posted during a crisis, which I had to take care. There was a kind of open mandate to me that, oh, you you take whatever money you want, 10, 20 crores, and please do something and all that. So that kind of mindset the government was in that time, and they were in a difficult situation. So I said, okay. So what first and foremost thing which I proposed was to go and ask for new prisons. We put up, and I must put it on record that the famous PIL, the 406/2013 inhuman conditions of Indian, 1382 Indian prisons was the driving point for me. I took advantage of all those directions issued by the Supreme Court. Now, overcrowding was one. Staff shortage of staff was number two, and there are other medical and other facilities. There are a lot of sundry recommendations were there, but I concentrated to number one was staff. So, and there was, if I remember, there was a direction from the Supreme Court that by 31st December of a particular year, maybe 2018 or 17, we had to we have to fill up the vacancies. Now you have to have the staff. First, we have to increase the staff, and then fill up the vacancies. So I went to the government, and I just to tell you, in two tranches, we got 1,900 new recruits, warders and jailers and the assistant superintendents and all, mostly warders. So 1,900 was the total strength of the Karnataka prisons when I joined, and when I left after 2.5 years, I was having double the strength. As you said, how we do the advocacy with the government, we need to do that. Whatever way we can do that, whatever way it is possible, we have to convince that. In one of the meetings, I can tell you, the CM, once we were discussing about the new prisons, each prison of 1,000 capacity, high security prison, cost at least 200 crores. 200 crores those days. I'm talking about 17, 18, 19 and all that. Now, in the budget meeting, when I was putting up my department's budget, the Home Minister and all the state hierarchy, state administration hierarchy, and then the CM, I can tell you on record that CM said, "Oh, Ms. Megrick, how is it possible to spend 200 crores? And these are all, high-fi prisons and all that." I said, sorry, sir, it is not high-fi prisons. They are not VIP prisons. They are called high security prisons. The point here is that to some extent they are VIP prisons. Now, fellow sitting in England says that Indian prisons are not suitable for me. So either Mumbai or Bangalore or any other prison in India is not suitable, not livable, not stable. I can't stay there. So we have that kind of things and all that. We have to do that. And sometime if I or you, if we have to unfortunately go to prison, then I think it is difficult for we can realize that. So immediately the whole budget meeting was, made into laughter. And then he said, okay, how many you want? So we could get four prisons, central prisons in Karnataka. Bangalore, Parapanagrara added 1,000 capacity. Then one was in Mangalore, very difficult place, border area. And then another was in these areas of Gulbarga and Bidar and Bijapur, the North Karnataka. So we could have that. Now those prisons, unfortunately, I'm telling you, I'm happy to see that even after 4 or 5 years also, I've been seeing that those prisons are almost complete now. Now, a lot of things I have taken reports of CHRI in the past, which were lying there in the record. And I had gone through, some of my predecessors had done outstanding work in association with CHRI and all that. So I laid hand on those reports and found out that and my interaction was always there, CHRI and all that. So I said, why can't we, bring up the third party, a reputed, organization. I don't say civil society, we are not a civil society, according to me. We are a very reputed organization which do a very, very quality work without any rhymes and reasons and all that. So one 2008 report, which you have written, CHRA written about Karnataka prison, I laid hand on that. And that is how it became process basis for our, the legal aid, Karnataka legal aid, they have appointed CHRI for the study as per the mandate of the Honorable Supreme Court. And that way, this history, Madhurima and, Sugandha, they are all there. They have done an excellent job. And that documentation, like I looked forward to 2008 document, and I did act upon that. So now, whatever documents you have, I've no occasion to go through those documents now, but then a lot of interaction we had with all your, researchers and all that. So we have to rely upon that. They're very authentic and very reliable reports. And now, data comes out of that. Now, when there's an element of positivity and trustworthiness in the prison administration, things automatically happen. Now, for your kind information, Karnataka has 30% reservation for the women in all ranks. The jailer and below, they have 30% reservations. So we had recruited in one batch 330, first batch of 1,100 warders we recruited, and there were 389 women, warders. And many of them, about 89 or 90, were there who were engineers. Can you imagine? That's how it is there. And when they had come for the training, we have trained them in the police training school setup. I'm not police training, police school setups, not prison training academy or prison training school, police training schools, which had very well developed infrastructure and all that. And you won't believe the kind of response and kind of training they got. It is marvelous. It is marvelous. And then they did that. So this is how it is there. And then a lot of administrative things we also, started and all that, that. So like it was mentioned there, the data we generate through many sources in the prison and all that. We use it for the, what you call it could be under trial and convict. It could be their literacy level. It could be their socioeconomic background. That could be their age profile, time of detention, duration and all that. And then children in conflict with law. That again, we have discussed all those things and all that. So prison administration decision making itself depends a lot of things, a lot of on data and all that. And it was earlier mentioned about the detention centers. No, I perhaps Mrs. Meera Borwankar also would perhaps agree with me.
Forgive me, Mr. Can you make this your very last point? Because I'm
at the last. I'm at the last. Yeah, I'm the last. So the detention center and other areas which are perhaps not part of the prison administration. So because the detention center is not they are not prisoners. They are not they are not punished by the law, or they are not under any laws. They are different Citizenship Act, and all those areas are different. So we can, for a time being, if we include them, then we'll dilute the whole thing and all that. So in nutshell, in a minute, what I would like to say that that e-prison system. I think it's very important. The NCRB, BPRND, and all that e-prison system has to improve a lot, has to be strengthened and all that. There are states, perhaps, I'm sorry to say that there are states where there is no connectivity, there is no network available there, no resources. So the government of India should take care of areas of prison administration and all that. So it is useful for all the stakeholders, like government, for the purpose of training, administration, and all those things. Then courts, the visitation by the courts, the court overreach or court out, the supervision by the courts is not very satisfactory. I must say that very satisfactory. And if they visit, be useful as it was pointed out, there is a format. If it is devised and they have to fill up a format and then send, perhaps now some efforts are being made. But that could be one more thing. If the judiciary pays more attention on the judicial oversight of the courts, that will again give a lot of things and all that. So these are the, a lot of things. And again, I would say that the academia is again very important. You are part of academia and civil society both. So please ensure that a lot of research work is done in the prisons. There was another participant who is doing his PhD. I will be very happy if more and more, research projects are taken within the prisons and seeing actually what is happening there and all that. And I'm telling you, the same data, if it comes out, and if it is used by police, it will be perhaps help in the crime prevention and society at a large and all that. This aspect also there. This is what I would like to say. And thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Megarek. It's always so interesting.
No, it's okay. I understand that.
But thank you so much.
We can speak for hours together, but anyway, it's okay.
I look forward to that.
Yeah, sure.
Dr. Raghavan, apologies for making you wait so long, but you are part of the family, so you'll have to bear with that.
No problem at all.
But you are an academician, and you've been part of the India Justice Report, and you have got an overview of the criminal justice system. But today, looking at prisons, looking at the limitations of, there are many expectations of the India Justice Report or IndiaSpend, but we are restricted by what is available in the data. So would you like to talk about how you have used data, or how we can improve on what we have now?
Yeah. Thank you, Maya, so much for inviting me for this very august panel discussion. And I've enjoyed every minute of listening to all the speakers who have spoken before me. And when you refer to me as academician, I heard a term yesterday in another meeting, online meeting, with some colleagues in UK, and they use a term called pracademician. These are practitioners who become academicians. So I think I like the term more than an academician. I think I'm a pracademician. That's on a light note. Now, coming to the question that you are asking me, I have always felt the need for hard data, especially when it comes to advocacy with the government and the courts. And that has been one of the gaps in our system, particularly in the criminal justice system. The kind of robust data that is required to bring about changes in the system has always been lacking. And this is one of the reasons why we all came together to start the India Justice Report initiative. If you look at, for example, if you look at the census data, you look at the NFHS data, or you look at other kinds of, the periodic labor force survey, or you look at the recent household consumption data, there is so much effort that goes into it. There is a Statistical Commission of India, and the person who heads it is a very, very senior statistician. Unfortunately, when it comes to criminal justice, it is largely left to, the organizations which are headed not by specialists, but by generalists. So even if you're talking of NCRB, for example, it is not headed by a statistician. It is headed by a police officer. And this is the tragedy of our criminal justice system, that everybody seems to be an expert, and and therefore they have views on how the system needs to be reformed, and we don't have professionals manning different positions who are all specialists in their own right and in their own special area. So we are left with whatever data is given to us by the government. So we have the Crime in India reports, and we have the Prison Statistics India report. These are the only two main, and now we have the National Judicial Data Grid. So we have these three sets of data that we have to deal with. I, for one, have always tried to use whatever data is available at our disposal to make a case for reforms. And we have tried to do this throughout our work at Prayas, which people are familiar with. It's a field action project of the Center for Criminology and Justice at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences. So just to give you a couple of examples, the issue of overcrowding is often linked to the issue of under trials languishing in prison. And there is a link between what happens at the judicial level with vis-a-vis what is happening at the institutional level. So if I want to highlight the percentage of under trials or the percentage of women in prisons, or I want to look at the issue of people who have been granted bail and yet continue to languish in prison for want of surety bail or for want of cash, or if I want to highlight the fact that there are huge number of vacancies in the prison department, at all levels, right from guards to the level of jailers and medical officers, and especially correctional officers, psychologists, counselors, and social workers, I need data because no government of the day or courts are going to listen to you if you give them anecdotal data. If you tell them that this is my experience in Arthur Road Prison, they'll say, okay, all right. But what about the overall situation? So this is where I think data becomes very, very important. The other area where I feel that, data can be used to kind of highlight issues and, use it for advocacy purposes is the courts. So, for example, when we were in court in the R.D. Upadhyay versus State of Andhra Pradesh matter, we raised the issue of children of prisoners left outside. The court was going into the issue of children living in prison with their mothers. But we, through our submission, through the amicus curiae in that matter, we tried to raise the issue of children left outside. And the fact was, there is no data in our country about how many children are there who are left outside with their parents in prison. And this is an advocacy point for us, that the Prison Statistics India report should also include one data point on how many children, minor children below 18 years are there of the people who are in prison. And it's not difficult to collect this data. All that has to be done is at the time of admission, the prisoner has to be asked how many minor children does that person have, and where are they? That's all that needs to be documented, and that can be brought into the Prison Statistics India report. Another example I want to give is of the poor honorarium that is paid to legal aid lawyers. When it comes to providing legal aid to marginalized sections of the population. And here again, we find that we don't have data on what is the current rate of honorarium paid to legal aid lawyers across the states of India. You don't have it at your fingertips. It should actually be available on the NALSA website. That anybody who wants to know what is the honorarium that is being paid to legal aid lawyers in a particular state, that data should be available. So these are some of the issues that I want to highlight. I want to also take up one more minute to explain a particular case that I was part of. This was in 2005-2006 when there was a PIL filed in the Bombay High Court by PUCL, People's Union for Civil Liberties, versus the state of Maharashtra. The PIL was about the condition of women prisoners in Baikala jail. And in that particular petition, the court appointed a committee to look into the problems and give solutions. And I was one of the members of that committee that the court had set up. And one of the issues we raised in that petition was the huge number of vacancies in the prison department. And we had the data from the prison department. We highlighted it in our report. And at that point of time, if I remember right, the vacancy was more than 25%. And the court passed an order that all vacancies should be filled up within 3 months. It didn't happen within 3 months, but it happened very soon. And, the vacancies got filled up. Unfortunately, over a period of time, the situation has gone back to what it was earlier. So I personally feel that data has great importance, and we all should be welcoming data. Data should not be seen as a critique of the government. Data should be seen as where are the gaps and what can we do to improve them. And any kind of, systemic faults or systemic gaps should be seen as a collective failure and not of a particular department. So because all the departments in the criminal justice system are linked to each other. And this is where when Sugandha asked the question of, interdepartmental coordination, I think it is absolutely crucial that there is a mechanism at the state and the district level to ensure that there is interdepartmental coordination between police, prison, judiciary, and other departments like women and child, education and health, because the life of a prisoner is divided into these so many departments. And therefore, one needs to these departments to come together. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Dr. Raghavan. That was very succinct and very to the point. Before I go to the questions, I just wanted to mention one of my frustrations is that there is not enough data on the accountability mechanisms, the supervisory mechanisms.
Yeah.
For instance, the Board of Visitors.
Yeah.
The UTRCs.
Yes.
All of these. And even if there were, there is nothing or no one that is held accountable when they are not diligent.
Right.
If we made a beginning by looking at the data and seeing how many times they have met,
right,
how many visits have they made,
that
would raise the specter of future accountability.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
And the same thing for legal aid. They have this mentoring and monitoring committee, but then it's almost an internal committee with no public scrutiny of that.
It just struck me that recently the government of India has come out with a scheme for providing, cash bail and penalty. And I was part of the committee which was setting up the guidelines. And in the committee, I really tried to impress the other members of the committee that the plan to appoint the district collector as the chairman of the committee which will decide on cases is not a great idea, because the district collector is a very, very busy man or woman. And therefore, this will not be in their priority area. Finally, when I saw that was not going to work, I stressed upon the fact that the committee should have either a social worker or a civil society organization or the district probation officer as a member of the committee, because who is going to identify people who need this assistance? If you're expecting the collector to do it, it's not going to happen. If you're expecting the DLSA secretary to do it, it's not going to happen. If you're expecting the prison superintendent to do it, it's not going to happen. You need to have a person who will actually go from barrack to barrack and identify people who need this kind of assistance, and also do the due diligence. Because not everybody who has been granted cash bail needs to be supported. You really need to find out, whether there is, a situation at home whereby they need this kind of support. So thankfully, that has entered the guidelines, not as a committee member, but it says that there should be assistance taken of any of these characters by the committee. Again, the reluctance I found was a general suspicion of CSOs. At the committee discussions, I found that there is a general kind of suspicion about CSOs. So when you talk of accountability and bringing oversight and making it public, somewhere there is this, the two systems are functioning in silos. The system, that is the state actors are acting in their own silos, civil society organizations are acting in their own silos, and there is no coming together. And I think that has been one of the tragedies of our justice system, that there is NGOs, for example, are seen as people who are troublemakers, not people who can work with the system and try to improve, because we all agree that the system and the problems are too huge, and civil society organizations cannot reach the people the way the state can. So there is no question of CSOs trying to replace the state.
Right. We have only a few minutes, 4 minutes left, and I was wondering whether there's anybody who's asking any questions. But while we wait for that, I just wanted to remark that distrust between government and active citizens is part of a broader question, where government is seen as somebody who's ruling over rather than ruling with.
Yeah.
Because active citizens are really just asking to be included in their own governance.
Yeah, that's it.
And one of the reasons why boards of visitors are not constituted is because there is a feeling of complete distrust at the local level. That people who are ordinary eminent citizens of that locality are not suitable to come and visit prisons. However, in the old act, in the Prison Act, the original Prison Act, the boards of visitors were to be constituted with the local level people, so that the prison administration would have the benefit and assistance of local knowledge, local industry, local business.
Yeah.
So it's a great pity that this thing has happened, that the distrust is so great. I think one of our panelists was mentioning that they saw that the NGOs in a prison are the kinds who ameliorate, give blankets or do yoga or but then the other lot are not very welcome. So that is another problem.
Yeah, we, for example, while working with
this is huge.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that when we working in the prisons, time and again, we receive requests from prison officers at the local level to give us a computer, give us a TV, give us this or that. And we are not saying that it's not required. It's definitely required. But when you say we can't do this, we are here for something else, they form a kind of a negative opinion about you're saying that, you don't want to give. You have the money, but you don't want to give. So that relationship between the civil society organizations and administration often becomes, like a donor, because that's the kind of relationship that they would prefer to have most of the time.
Meera Barwanka, would you like to be making some comments as we close?
Maya, I think we had a good discussion. So nobody disagrees to the fact that data is very essential. And both for practitioners, academicians, or academicians, which Vijay has identified to be a new term. there is no doubt. And now that you asked me, Vijay, for your information, NCRB has statisticians at the very data collection and collation level. It may be headed by an IPS officer.
Okay.
They do have statisticians.
Okay.
So how to make the best use of available data, how to identify gaps, how to fill those gaps, let's all of us do together. And instead of being in adversarial relations,
absolutely,
we should all collaborate, civil society, academicians, NGOs, and the administration. So I think we should end that. It's in the interest of the community, in the interest of the prisoners, in the interest of general governance, that we all act together.
Maya, Mr. Abhijit has a question to ask. He's put it in the chat box.
I think the invitation to Mr. Abhijit has been extended by no less a person than Justice Muralidhar. And I'm sure that Vijay and Madam Borwanka would be happy to answer anything. Abhijit Bhai, I am sorry, I am not in a position to extend this thing. It is already 6:59, and like Cinderella, I am going to be cut off in 1 minute's time. So please forgive me. And if there is a question, please send it, and we will do our best to answer it. And
I'm also open to them directly sending an email, and we'll try to respond.
Maya, you are muted. So I think let's close.
Thank you. I apologize to both my panelists for not allowing them to speak further, and also to my audience. I thank you so much for being here, and thank you, Madhurima, for having brought us all together. Mr. Begarek, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.